Hey class, John here. So in this video I want to talk about, I'm going to start off by talking about the AK-47. The AK-47, other known as the Kalashnikov, is the revolutionary's gun of choice the world over. To the best of my knowledge, it's the only gun that has actually made it onto the flag. A couple of different flags. It's on the money of a few nation states because of what an amazing role it played in liberating those countries from colonial rule and other things like that. The reason why everybody loves the AK-47 so much is not because it's the best gun in the world. It's not. It's not in the sense of it's not the most accurate. It doesn't shoot necessarily the farthest or the most accurate or any of that stuff. The reason why the AK-47 is the revolutionary's gun of choice is because it is incredibly reliable. So it's a gun that can fire even after it's gotten wet, even after it's gotten rusty, even after it's got sand in it or dirt in it. It can be bent a little bit and it'll still work. So in non-ideal situations, it still manages to work fairly well most of the time, right? And I think, and there's plenty of guns that are better when they're brand new and perfect, but if they get, even slightly bent, or if they, anything, they get a little bit dirty or wet, they fall apart and they don't work at all, right? So I think the AK-47 is a good kind of model for what we should expect of our political systems, of our programs, of lots of things, right? That people propose. Like, if your system requires ideal circumstances to work, if your system can only work when everything is absolutely right, then it's probably not a very good system, right? Now, there's a way that people try and weasel out of this, right, is to sort of explain away examples that don't fit, right? So I grew up in a working class neighborhood, and I remember hearing this again and again. If you brought up kind of all the horrible things that happened in the Soviet Union or in various kind of communist countries or socialist countries, these old kind of communists and socialists, they would sort of pound their fist on the table and say, that wasn't real socialism, or that wasn't real communism. And they would say, oh, we've never tried real communism. We've never tried real socialism, right? And this is sort of a convenient way of avoiding any of the problems with the system. I've heard the same thing, when people bring up kind of horrible things that were done that have happened because of capitalism. They say, well, that wasn't real capitalism. That was just the state, right? And they'll explain away any problems with markets or capitalism and say, well, that's actually just state intervention. And if we got rid of all of that government meddling and things like that, you would see that the system is perfect. Once again, I call bullshit, right? I call bullshit. Like, a couple other examples, obvious ones. If you bring up really nasty qualities about Christianity or Islam, a certain kind of person will say, well, that wasn't real Christianity, that wasn't real Islam, as a way of explaining away unflattering things that have been not done in the name of Jesus or Islam or something like that. I think we should really, really call bullshit on things like that, because going back to the AK-47 thing, if the system is actually worthwhile, it should be able to work in non-ideal situations, and also your system should be capable of reform, right? And the only way that you can reform a system is if you admit that it has problems, right? So, for instance, I was very happy one time when I heard my pastor in the church that we go to got up, and when he was the gospel lesson for that Sunday was on was on the book of John. And he just forthrightly said there's some real anti-Semitism right at the heart of Christianity, and people who say that somehow, Nazism and anti-Semitism in Christian societies is all just that it has nothing to do with Christianity. Originally, he says this is just not true, and he read these passages from the Gospel that week, and he said very clearly, if you look at the earlier Gospels in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, when they're talking about the opponents of Jesus, they refer to them as particular schools of thought within the Jewish community. So the Pharisees or the Sadducees, right? But in the book of John, suddenly it just becomes the Jews, right? And he says, you can see that it wasn't a stretch, right, for people to draw very anti-Semitic conclusions from passages like this. Right. So likewise, I think, if people are bringing up kind of ugly things that have happened or ugly implications that can be raised in the name of, based on surahs in the Quran or in the Hadith, or bringing up problems associated with libertarianism or any ism, socialism, any of them, rather than trying to explain it away, you should think about how could be reformed, right? And perhaps maybe it should be scrapped, right?